Hello, good morning. We are starting earlier today than yesterday, and if I were you, I might have missed this. I am so happy to be here. I have heard about how amazing this conference is for 2 years now, and now I get to be here with all of you. And I'm going to tell everyone back in California how amazingly sunny and warm it is in London. All right, so this conference is called the Lead Developer, and we're all here because we want to be better leaders. And to be a good leader, that starts with you, the person. And Christian talked a little bit about this yesterday, about how to scale yourself, and I want to talk about the foundations of how you even start to begin to scale yourself. And that starts with a healthy foundation. A foundation of being physically and mentally healthy and to be a productive person. And the thing is, you know the basics, because the human body hasn't evolved that much for like 10,000 years. Our basic needs are pretty much the same. That's to eat well, to nourish our body, to exercise, to nourish our physical body, to sleep, to nourish our mind, and to have good personal relationships because we're social animals. And I've worked in the personal development space to help people build better habits and do self-improvement. And just getting these basics down is something that most people still struggle with, even when you know what to do. And the thing is, when you don't have a strong foundation, you're not able to be an effective leader. You can pull it off for a while, maybe even for years. I did at my first startup, but eventually you'll burn out. And if you suspect that you're burning out, you're probably already burnt out. So my previous job was at Coach.me, where we started with an app to help people build better habits. And we shifted that into coaching because we realized that even when people know what to do, you know you should eat better and exercise, it's still really hard to know how to actually do that in your lives. And at Coach.me, the top areas that people wanted to improve have always been the same. It's to achieve better physical and mental health and to be more productive as a result. Yet, despite spending years learning about all of the different ways, all of the best practices of how people do self-improvement and do personal development, I personally have still struggled with it. So after 4 years at Coach.me, I was ready to take on a new challenge. I went from helping people improve themselves to helping the government improve services for people. So at the beginning of last year, I joined a company called Nava, and we were just 20 people at the time. And we work with government agencies in the US to build digital services for millions of American residents. And the UK, as Mary mentioned, has a government digital service. It's the first one of its kind, which runs gov.uk, and we actually take a lot of inspiration from all the amazing work that they do. So in a typical company, an established company, the path for engineers would look something like this. With plenty of years to grow into your next role, and see if management is for you, hopefully with support and mentoring and guidance. And at Coach.me, my previous boss asked me, he said, "Hey, Alicia, you've been doing this for a while. Are you interested in maybe managing people at some point?" And I emphatically told him, no. Who wants to deal with all the people problems? I just want to build stuff. Ironically, what we were building at the time was a leadership coaching service that attracted a lot of first-time managers as clients. So even though I was immersing myself in a lot of information about what good management practices are, I didn't actually quite connect to what good management can do. We were a very small team, and with senior engineers, we're just managing ourselves. However, at Nava, I happened to join at the start of a major growth phase. So my path was more like a hockey stick. And I'm Canadian, so I have to work in a hockey reference somewhere. I was promoted to engineering manager after only 2 months of joining the company. And then only 2 months after that, I was promoted to head of engineering. And our team size tripled over the course of a year, going from 20 to nearly 70 people. And I don't think I was qualified for the job. In fact, I know I wasn't qualified, because no one is ever qualified for this job until you've actually done it. But I do have a dozen years of early startup experience. I've been a co-founder and early engineer for a very long time, and have worn many different leadership hats at different companies. And what this means is that at least I know all of the things that I don't want to do again. And I have an inkling of the things that I do want to do. So it made me the most qualified, unqualified person for the job. And this is how I went from managing no one at all to managing nearly 40 engineers in the span of just a few months. And as you can imagine, and perhaps some of you have lived through, with this kind of growth, things start to break down. I started to break down. And I've always prided myself on being someone that's very productive, that can handle a lot of stress. However, the stress of going from juggling one ball, even if it is a very big ball, to juggling a dozen of balls very quickly was too much. I started having a lot of anxiety. I started having a lot of trouble sleeping. And I just didn't have any energy to do anything other than do the work. I didn't see friends. I stopped doing all of my hobbies, and it was very challenging, to say the least. And I started to think about quitting. I thought, maybe I'm not really cut out for this leadership thing. It's quite a lot. And I thought how nice that would be. Which didn't actually make any sense, because I loved working with my team, and I couldn't ask for a more motivating mission. But every day, I just felt overwhelmed. So my husband, Ben, who's somewhere in the audience, found you. He helped me realize that I was depressed. This was surprising to me, because I've actually been depressed before, more than once. And I've gone to therapy, and I have read a lot of books and talked to a lot of friends about the struggles of mental health, especially in tech and especially in startups. And I've overcome depression successfully more than once, so I thought I knew how to handle it. At least I thought I would be able to recognize the signs. But that's what's so insidious about mental health, is that the faculty you use to detect problems is the exact same thing that's actually broken. And our brains are very, very good at covering up these problems, because we're very good at rationalizing. And I was very good at justifying my deep pessimism. And that's not very hard to do in today's world. You can just turn on the news. And despite knowing all of this information about physical and mental health, I was still going under without recognizing it. Information doesn't turn into knowledge until you're able to apply it. And I wasn't able to apply it to myself. So I went into a negative spiral. I had stopped exercising completely, even though last year was when I started getting into triathlons, and I was training and I was in decent shape. And I had the typical excuses. I was very busy with work. I was traveling a lot, because I'm based in San Francisco and our headquarters are in Washington, D.C. The inflection point came when I went to my doctor, who informed me that depression is actually linked to insomnia. I knew I was having trouble sleeping, but I didn't realize that I had a sleeping disorder. That seems pretty serious. But by then, I had been struggling with sleep for almost a month, which almost qualified me for long-term insomnia. I was only sleeping for half the time that I spent in bed. It's crazy. So what I learned was that insomnia can trigger depression, and in turn, depression can also make you sleep worse. So it really is a very vicious cycle. Then I really focused on learning how to sleep. And if you suspect that you might have similar issues, I wrote a very, very long article about all the things that I did to learn how to sleep again. And you can check that out. And the thing is that it actually worked really, really well. I recovered from both insomnia and depression in a couple of months. And the thing is, I didn't actually sleep anymore. I don't actually sleep that much more. But the anxiety about not sleeping is totally gone. But that's not the focus of this talk. Here I want to talk about something else that really helped me. And that's getting back into triathlon training. It may seem counterintuitive to go from no exercise at all to start training for not one, but 3 sports at the same time, during a time when my work responsibilities were only growing. However, this is one of the best things that I did, and I feel like it really saved me. Because exercise was the thing that kicked me into a virtuous cycle. It improved my sleep, which improved my mental health. And exercise is shown to be just as effective as sleeping pills for insomnia, and just as effective as antidepressants for depression. And unlike medication, all of the side effects of exercise are good ones. You eat better, you feel better, and sometimes you can look better too. And while it seems like I'm doing twice as much, I'm taking on a sport that's known to be extremely time-consuming. Like literally when I told someone that I was doing triathlons, he told me that his wife had started doing triathlons and they almost got divorced. I'm actually balancing out my work. While I'm training my body, my mind is recovering from the mental stress of work. And the thing to understand about management is that it's a very different kind of energy. It's not just mental energy. Coding takes a lot of mental energy. But management takes a lot of emotional energy. When you're coding and your compiler's acting up or you're hitting some stupid bug, you can get mad and yell at your computer. But you can't do that with people, or you shouldn't. And people are all different. It's not like with computers, you tell it to one thing and it does it, you're good. It's gonna keep doing that thing. With people, it's different. Every day, every hour, every person, you're responding to different emotions. To be an empathetic leader, which I hope you strive to be, your mind needs to be in good shape. As humans, or really any organic life form, we do need stress in order to grow. But we also need space to recover from that stress. Otherwise, stress can literally kill us. In Japan, Korea, and China, they all have a term for this. They have a term for death caused by overwork. We tend to idolize busyness, especially in America, and I think Europeans are actually much better at this. But being endlessly busy is not the end goal. You have to think about, are you actually spending your limited time and energy on the right things? Are you moving yourself forward in the right direction? Triathlon training taught me about recovery. Recovery is about learning how to be idle, how to relax, even if you're moving very fast. Because any energy you expend that's not efficiently moving you in the direction you want to go, it's wasted. You're just wasting your energy. And you need to reserve your energy for when you really need to push. My cycling coach, not the dog. My cycling coach is a 2-time Ironman champion. and he has coached other people to be Ironman champions. I'm not doing an Ironman, by the way. That's a lot. He is always telling us to relax, even while we're biking, when we're biking very, very fast. And a great trick to do that is to smile. Try smiling without relaxing. When things get tough, when things get really stressful, remember to smile. Triathlons are made up of 3 sports: running, cycling, and swimming. And swimming is by far my weakest sport. I have a decent breaststroke, but freestyle is the stroke that is most efficient for humans. When you want to go further and faster, you want to do freestyle because you expend the least amount of energy. And switching forms is difficult because in the short term, I'm going to go slower. I swim slower now than I used to because I'm swimming freestyle and I'm not very good at it yet. But in order to go faster in the long run, I committed to really learning how to swim freestyle properly. And all athletic pursuits are about form. You want to have good form when you're running, when you're cycling. But it matters the most in swimming because water is 1,000 times denser than air. And if you don't move the smoothest way through the water, you're going to spend all of your energy trying not to drown rather than moving forward. And if you have bad form, you can't go fast. And worse still, you will end up injuring yourself, which means you'll take longer to recover and even longer to correct the bad form and to break your bad habits. Training has also taught me how to embrace discomfort. I made a major turning point this year because though I started running 5 years ago and I have run over 2,000 miles, I never wanted to do it. I just forced myself to because exercise is supposed to be good for you. I never felt good doing it, which is why it's so easy to stop doing it when things get busy. And that changed this year. Now I actually really look forward to opportunities to exercise because it's like taking a mini vacation every day. And this isn't news to many of you who are already athletes. But as someone who was a stereotypical nerd growing up, I spent a lot more time indoors with books than doing sports outside. But now I am genuinely really happy to wake up at the crack of dawn and go biking up a mountain, this mountain right here, or go swimming in the freezing cold ocean, which is this bay. It's very, very cold. And I realized that when I let, in my mind, go the idea that it's supposed to be uncomfortable, I discovered that my body is actually much stronger and more capable than I give it credit for. And that exercising can be really fun. I've taken all of these lessons from training into my work, and now it's the essence and the foundation of my productivity. I went from being overwhelmed and not being able to think about anything but the bare minimum of what I had to do at work. In a few months, I have prepared for this talk. I've written a couple of popular blog posts after 2 years of not writing anything. And I have trained for my very first Olympic distance triathlon during that time, which I completed just a couple of weeks ago in just over 3 hours. And all the while, my work responsibilities have only grown, and I've only felt more capable now of handling it all. But no matter how productive you are as an individual, you can't be a leader without people. So let's talk about team. We tend to think of a leader as a person at the front, like a commander leading their troop to battle. And if the leader is wrong, their team is doomed. That's a lot of pressure to put on one person to get everything right. There's another way to look at the role of a leader, and that's by flipping it upside down as someone who creates the foundations to support their team's growth and development. A leader creates the conditions for individuals to thrive and achieve their potential. Individuals who can then provide the support for others. And in this way, we grow a vibrant ecosystem, helping each other grow and achieve our collective goals. A gardener doesn't tell plants how to grow. A gardener creates the best environment for the plants to flourish. But you still need to know how to garden, and you still need to know what to weed out. Leadership is about dealing with unknowns. If everyone already knew what to do, you wouldn't need leaders. And when we look back on history and we look back on which companies failed and which were successful, and we read these business case studies, it seems really obvious. Wow, how did they not see that coming? How did it turn into such a disaster? Or in the case of successful outcomes, we like to point to all the decisions they made that worked out, and we say, oh, that's why, let's do these things. And it's very easy to create a narrative, but a false one, and point to things that contribute to either success or failure because you already know the outcome. But the truth is that we only ever live looking forward into the unknown. The unknown unknowns are truly boundless. And as a leader, you're often making decisions that you might have 49% confidence in or 51% the other way, and it's really not clear what the best decision is. And all the risky bets that people have made that didn't pan out, they don't make it into blog posts. They don't make it into things that you get to read about. They just disappear. And there's a lot of cargo culting due to hindsight bias, to confirmation bias, all of these biases that are built into our brains where we like to make a tidy story out of something, but it's not so tidy at all when you're the one who has to make the decision. And what you should realize is that the more you know, the more you realize how much you truly don't know. You can't study to be a leader. You may have received information, like I have due to my job. I read a lot of management books before I became a manager. But you can't turn that information into knowledge until you can apply it. Then you'll know what works and doesn't work. Like Alice talked about, the car ads, it all looks shiny until you try to apply it to your own company, and then you realize very quickly, migrating to Docker is super hard. And maybe someone else has a beautiful, grandiose, formal English garden, but you're actually just trying to grow some vegetables on your balcony. And maybe someone has a lovely greenhouse, but you happen to live in a desert. And their techniques might be excellent, but they're not going to work for you, and you might kill all of your plants if you apply the wrong thing. A lot of our so-called best practices come from certain companies, they have certain cultures, and they have certain problems that they're trying to solve. They may be much bigger or smaller than you, and either way, as a leader, you have to use your judgment, you have to develop your judgment to figure out what are the things that are actually going to work for you with your company in your unique situation. Going from an engineer to a tech lead, to managing a team, to managing multiple teams, every single step of the way, you have to learn a new set of skills. You have to fill a new toolbox. But more than that, you have to stop using the tools that got you here, the tools that you have honed, that you have gotten to know really, really well, that have served you time and again. Leadership is not just about a set of skills. The skills are the tools in your toolbox, like delegation and prioritization, how to have better meetings. The hard part is knowing when to use which tool. And if you use the wrong tool, you might be very inefficient and you might tire yourself out. Or even worse, you're digging your team into a hole. And a lot of new manager mistakes come down to continuing to use your old toolbox instead of learning the new tools. For example, engineering managers that still spend the majority of their time coding or making all of the technical decisions instead of delegating to their team and empowering their team to make those decisions. With each change in role, not only do you have to learn a whole new set of skills, you're also having to give up your identity. You have to give up your identity of being an amazing engineer to being a not very good manager. And that's incredibly difficult to do. Because you do things a certain way for a reason. Because you've been really successful at doing it that way. That's why you've been promoted in the first place. So when you get feedback that maybe you should do something different, it's actually very difficult to truly take that in. Because you've gotten to where you are by doing things your way. And how could someone else possibly know better than you what you should do? And how can you give up something that you know so well that's been successful for you to try this other thing that you're not even good at? And you have no idea if it's going to work or not. Everything I learned about self-improvement and personal development is that it's very difficult to make significant change. But to be a good leader, you have to change. And the foundation for the capacity to change comes from letting go of your ego, of your identity. Because great leadership is founded on humility. That regardless of how far you've made it, you know very little. And with that kind of beginner's mind, you're always open to learning, to growing, and to change. So how do you develop humility? Being humble is about listening, another very important manager skill. When you're trying to listen, you can't just be caught up in your own thoughts. You can't just be waiting for your turn to say what's on your mind. And as you manage more people, you're going to have more meetings. So how do you mentally deal with this context switching all the time, where you can truly be present with each person that you're meeting with, to truly listen to them, understand their problems, their perspective, and what they're trying to tell you? It's very hard. It's very hard to be present with each person and to truly listen. When I was promoted, I had a lot of anxiety. I was constantly worrying about all the things I wasn't doing, what I should be doing, the people I was managing. I was all over the place. And what really helped me was schedule time to worry. I would set a timer for 10 minutes, and I would just worry until the time was up. Every morning I did this. And the magical thing about our brains is that when you tell it to worry, it actually calms down. You suddenly realize your problems are not really that severe. After a couple weeks, I didn't need the worry time anymore. If there is a problem, I just make time to plan for it. I make time to plan, I make time to solve the problems. And if I can't make time, then it's not high enough on my priority list. And outside of when I'm actively planning or doing, I don't need to expend my mental energy, because that just makes me frazzled and it makes me less effective at doing what's in front of me. And besides exercise, the other practice I do every day is meditation. And meditation is all about training the mind to be present, to be mindful about the here and now. And while I've meditated on and off before, about 2 years ago, I made a commitment to meditate every day, even if it's just for a few minutes. And this is how long I've meditated for to now. And meditation is literally about doing absolutely nothing. Nothing. I'm just sitting there, not doing anything, not even thinking. And meditation has helped me tremendously, and in ways that I didn't expect at all. I used to think that I was just a really angry person. If I got into a disagreement, my default behavior is to get really angry at people. That's not good. Not a good leadership quality. And I didn't start meditating to deal with my anger because I actually didn't see my anger as a problem. In fact, I saw my anger as something that was useful, as the way that I dealt with a lot of unfairness that I experienced working in tech as a woman. Having to always prove that I was technical enough despite my many years of experience, having a degree from a top engineering school, and having to try that much harder to have my opinion count for half as much. My anger is what has protected me and allowed me to continue to work in this industry. But when you're angry, you're not receptive to anything, certainly not to feedback, which we all know is really, really crucial. Because you've already thrown up a wall of fire. I just love this effect. And meditation gave me space to separate my thoughts and my feelings from me. So I wasn't bound up in the anger. And it doesn't mean I don't get angry, that I'm now just like Zen all the time. Far from it. With the world the way it is, I experience a lot of outrage all of the time, but now I'm able to calm down quickly and bring it back to a place where I have a choice of how I want to respond. And I'm not even saying that anger is a bad emotion. It's not. We should feel angry about injustice. But now I have a choice in how I express that anger. Instead of just blasting it out indiscriminately, I can choose to respond in a positive, measured way that actually helps me achieve my goals and not burn up my relationships. But I still mess up plenty. The higher up you go, fewer and fewer people will tell you when you're messing up. If you're the leader, you are de facto the person that's most knowledgeable about your role. And when you start managing a team, your manager is not going to know more about your team than you. So you're the person most equipped to figure out what's going wrong and how to fix it, even if you don't feel equipped at all. So how do you know when you're messing up? And how do you learn what to do if there's no one to tell you? Leadership is about developing self-awareness. When you're aware of yourself, you know where your weak areas are, and then you can do something about it. But that's really hard. You're a leader because you have many strengths, but it's also those same strengths that are the source of your biggest blind spots. For me, my anger was the source of my assertiveness and how I got things done and how I was really effective. But I was blind to the way it affected other people. And it took me years to correct. If we could only see our weak areas, we would strengthen them. But our blind spots are literally areas we cannot see. For example, a lot of engineers are promoted into management because they're really good engineers. But it turns out that being a great engineer and being a great manager are pretty different things. Certainly, there are people that are just naturally great at both. But if you're a very strong engineer, it may actually be harder to develop good management skills because you're overly relying on your skills as an IC. And unfortunately, management is often seen as a necessary evil. I mean, if everyone could just code, wouldn't that just be great? Which is why engineering leads, we tend to get this question a lot. Do you miss coding? And my answer is no. Because for me, coding is not about the code. It's about what I'm trying to achieve through coding. And the things that I'm trying to achieve now are not best served by me coding. Instead, I want to enable and support my team in achieving our collective goals and our mission of serving people. Which brings me to the very last part of my talk. You are here because you want to lead, but what do you want to lead people towards? You want to be more productive, which means you want to do more things with less time, but to what end? What's the bigger picture? The promise of technology and why I studied computer engineering was because this is what I believed would really help people. And technology is very useful. It's about building tools. A huge part of what makes us human is our ability to make and use tools. Yet, even at the start of my career, I saw that this wasn't the case. I was an intern at Amazon and got to visit one of the giant warehouses where all the products go out. And it was the summer of 2005, and J.K. Rowling was just about to release Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince. This is a book that sold 9 million copies in its first 24 hours and broke all book records. So I got to see the endless stacks of books filling the floor of the warehouse, and it was quite a sight. But the other thing that I saw there were so many people working in the warehouse. So many people whose every movement inside that warehouse was dictated by software. And just looking around at the different tech companies today, you can see how people are used to fill the gaps, the difficult parts in computer systems and in algorithms where people are almost literally cogs in a giant machine. It's not hard to see the effects on the consumer side either. What we buy, who we trust, what we think is the truth is now mediated by powerful algorithms whose interests are largely driven by profit. And this is not a new observation. Thinkers have foreseen this over the last century, since the advent of computers. Erich Fromm depicted a completely mechanized society directed by computers 50 years ago. We are creating technology that has ever larger power and impact over people's lives. Everyone says their technology is improving people's lives, but whose lives specifically? I work at Nava. We are a public benefit corporation, and our highest purpose is not the pursuit of profit, but to have the most benefit to people. And the work is really challenging. Imagine your software project, but the scope, the core requirements, and sometimes even the deadlines are written into law. But I'm energized every day working alongside people that truly care about making technology that serves people. So you're here, you already know how to leverage the extraordinary power of technology, and you have the skills and resources to be a great leader. What will you use your power for? Thank you.